what people want to hear when they come to church. Like, I don't mind choosing the topic every time, but I want to make sure that I'm hitting the mark. So just, you can take it home if you want, or we can fill it in now. Could you turn me down a little bit? And yeah, they were just random ideas that I put on there, so I don't feel you have to choose one of those. You can write down at the bottom. If you need a pen, I need a pen. Everyone. And there's also the box out the front you can also use to put questions in if you want us to address Bible-related questions during the sermon time. Feel free to, there's pieces of paper out there, feel free to write on there if you don't feel comfortable coming and talking to me and say, oh, I want you to address this sensitive topic, but I don't feel comfortable. You don't feel comfortable sharing it with me. Go ahead and write it and stick it in the box. Or if you've got suggestions or any sort of requests, go ahead and stick them in the box. That sound all right? Okay. Anyone need pens? All right. Let's start with a word of prayer. Everyone hot enough? Good. It's very hot. Who enjoyed, you can go ahead and start, Peter, if you haven't already. Who enjoyed reflecting on eternity last week? I enjoyed that. That was good fun. I could probably keep talking about it for a few more weeks if I wanted. It's one of those messages where I wish we had a whole bunch of other churches around so that I could go and share it again and again and again. I just really enjoyed reflecting and imagining what it will be like once this is all over, once the great controversy is over and we're there with Jesus in eternity. But we have to come back to here and now. We're not there yet. Sometimes it can seem like this world is a little bit dreary by comparison after you spent time imagining what that amazing New Jerusalem, that city is going to be like. There's that quote, "Oh, that I had wings like a dove so that I could fly away and be at rest." But we're not done here. And unless we want that city to be uninhabited, we have a work to do, don't we? Won't be much fun, won't be terribly much fun if we get to eternity and there's a whole lot of empty houses there next to ours. It'd be pretty depressing, wouldn't it? Of course it won't be, but you get my point. You've probably heard it said that there are only two things that we'll be taking with us into eternity. What are those two things? Our character and our friends, those people that we've introduced to Jesus. If I intend to bring people to Jesus, I need a character change. I'd like to examine today a few aspects of Jesus' character so we can see what it was that drew people to him. What was different about Jesus? He was loving. He's skipping ahead, Barry. We're not there yet. So who is Jesus? If we look at the gospel accounts, what are some of the things that what are some of the titles that people gave Jesus? What are some of the things that they labeled him? Remember? Savior. What's that? No, they called him. Yeah, they said he was working under the power of the devil. What other things did they say about him? The rock? teacher, Prince of Peace. Yes, some said Elijah. What was that? King of Kings. What other things did they say about him?
Doctor.
Yeah, he's a physician, a great physician.
He was called the Great Counselor, but I don't know what that means.
Yeah, that's right. Friend. Let's have a look at a few of those things. Some of the things that he was labelled were accurate, and some of them weren't accurate at all. We read when a couple of John's disciples are introduced to Jesus in John chapter 1. It says, one of the two who heard John speak and followed him was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. He first found his own brother Simon and said to him, we have found the Messiah, which is translated the Christ or the Anointed One. In another instance, Jesus asked his disciples, who do people say that I am? And they answered him, they said, some people say, oh, you're John the Baptist. Others say you're Elijah, reincarnated or re-embodied. Others say, you're one of the prophets. And Jesus said to them, who do you say that I am? Peter answered and said to him, you are the Christ. And then we have an angel speaking to Mary, said, and behold, you will conceive in your womb and bring forth a son, and you shall call his name Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Highest. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David. Of course, not everyone shared the same view of Jesus. Jesus, speaking of the religious leaders of the day, they said, the Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they said, look, a glutton and a winebibber or a drunkard and a friend of tax collectors and sinners. But wisdom is justified by her children. What do you think Jesus would have thought of the title friend of sinners? It pops up twice, I think, in the Bible.
Well, I think he was the friend of sinners.
Yeah. Do you think he would have liked being called that?
I think he would have. I see there last night I watched a program about the Salvation Army, and they went into the worst parts of London and they sorted out the worst drunkards and alcoholics and started with them. But you know, when Booth died, he had a tremendous funeral. The work that he did was absolutely amazing.
True Christianity, eh?
God himself said that we as a people were to leave the Salvation Army alone. You know, they were raised up to do that work amongst the needy. Evidently in London there was a very rich class and the poor that virtually lived in the gutters, you might say. But they certainly did a tremendous work. And it expanded all around the world.
They did the work of Jesus.
Yes, they did.
I think Jesus would have liked that title. Yeah? What was that? Yeah? Oh, that's pretty clever. It defines his mission? Yeah. So was it accurate? Was that an accurate title of him? Yeah, sorry. That's what he. That's what we were talking about last night, weren't we? There's a passage that has come up a few times in our studies in the last few weeks. In Luke 15, it says, "Then all the tax collectors and the sinners drew near to him to hear him. And the Pharisees and scribes complained, saying, 'This man receives sinners and eats with them.'" I would say that this accusation of the Pharisees and the scribes was pretty accurate. The sinners and common people of the day were drawn to Jesus, and he received them, it says. That's right, the woman caught in adultery. she needed a friend, and he certainly was a friend of hers. But did they intend this as a compliment when they said he's a friend of sinners? No. By this accusation, the religious leaders were trying to say that Christ likes to hang out with the sinful and the vile, and that somehow he was unaware of their condition. That's what they were trying to imply, weren't they? You see, the rabbis had been disappointed in Jesus. He was the one who claimed such a high character, but he didn't mingle with them. He didn't follow their methods. And so they were disappointed by that.
Well, I think, Matthew, Jesus said he came not to call the righteous, the sinners to repentance. You know, David said, thy way, O Lord, is in the sanctuary. But who has man got there to help us? Jesus is the only man up there in that heavenly sanctuary that is truly helping each one of us as our high priest, as our substitute.
Yeah.
And when he leaves that heavenly sanctuary and puts on the garments of King of Kings and Lord of Lords, probation closes. The 7 last plagues are poured out. So you know we truly do need to have that relationship with Jesus.
That's right.
The friend of sinners. That includes all of us.
That's right. And the religious leaders of the time couldn't understand that. They couldn't understand why this man was going around so humbly, and he was working with all types of people. He was going to all classes of people. They were thinking in their head, if he were a true prophet, he would come and join them and do what they were doing, if he were a true prophet. And he would treat these tax collectors and the sinners with the contempt that they deserved, or the indifference that they deserved. And they were angered by this because it seemed to them an odd thing that, on the one hand, these common folk were drawn to Jesus, and yet when they were in Jesus' presence, they felt self-condemnation because they could see his perfect loving character contrasted with themselves. So why were they drawn? Why were these people drawn to Jesus? And I think the answer to that question lay in their accusation in the beginning. They said, this man receives sinners. The people who came to Jesus felt when they were in his presence that they could escape this life of sin that they had. The despair and the fact that they really got down to the bottom. When they were in his presence, they felt there was a way out. And yet, when they were in the presence of the Pharisees and the scribes, they felt something completely different. They felt nothing but scorn and condemnation. But when Christ greeted them, he greeted them with love, and he greeted them and spoke about them as if they were children of God, because they were. Sure, they were separated from their Father, but Jesus made it very clear that they weren't forgotten by him. And it seems, as we go through some of the stories in the Bible, that the more miserable and the more sinful people were, the more Jesus viewed them with compassion and pity. Now, the farther they had wandered from him, it seems the greater the lengths that Jesus was prepared to go to save them. Remember the parable of the shepherd looking for the lost sheep? We looked at that care group a couple of weeks ago. How long did that shepherd search? Till he found it. And we see that played out in the life of Jesus, don't we? The lengths that he would go to. And the amazing thing is that the religious leaders of the time, the teachers, should have understood this from the scriptures they had already. We read about David, who had fallen into a great sin, He said, I have gone astray like a lost sheep. Seek your servant, for I do not forget your commandments. Another passage from Micah that stood out to me is, who is a God like you, pardoning iniquity and passing over the transgression of the remnant of his heritage? He does not retain his anger forever, because he delights in mercy. They should have realized this. It was right there in front of them. They claimed to uphold the scriptures, and yet they were living so far from it. It's imperative, if we want neighbors in eternity, that here and now we view people like Jesus viewed people. We see people through his eyes. So if you had to pin down a few things, what would you say it was that drew people to Jesus? Last week we talked about what's it going to be like when you see Jesus face to face in eternity. We're standing there in line and slowly moving forward as different people greet him. And then finally, there he is, right in front of you. What is it about him that draws people? What do you think? Yes, we do. We do throw our crowns at his feet. We realize the work he has done for us. But at the time when Jesus was ministering here on earth, what do you think it was? He oozed integrity. He treated everybody equally with love. His love radiates out and draws us. His face isn't haggard from worry. That's a good thought. I hadn't considered that. What a wonderful thought. The King of the universe, I like that picture, sitting down, listening. And none. No excuse.
Caiaphas was shocked when he came into the presence of Jesus, even though Jesus had been assaulted and was been pointed out he'd been assaulted, and he was brought before Caiaphas. And when Caiaphas came in, he was shocked at the manner and the bearing of Jesus. And then he simply turned to his evil agenda to accuse him. But for a moment, he was absolutely in awe when the man in front of him.
So that royalty shone through, yet he was humble. As Barry said, I think the first thing, most obvious thing is his love for people. I'm going to examine a little bit what that love was. I invite you to turn in your Bibles to Mark chapter 1. We're just going to have a look at a few passages. As you're turning there, a few times this phrase pops up in scriptures in Jesus' work. It says there in Matthew chapter 9, you stay there in Mark chapter 1, it says, "Then Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. For when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them, because they were wearied and scattered like sheep having no shepherd." Who would like to read a passage? Would you like to? So Mark chapter 1, verses 40 to 41.
And there came a leper to him, beseeching him and kneeling down to him, and saying unto him, If thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. And Jesus, moved with compassion, put forth his hand and touched him, and he saith unto him, I will, be thou clean.
It's that same phrase again. What does it say? What moved Jesus?
Compassion.
Compassion is what motivated him, and I think that's probably a more accurate word for us today rather than just love. It was this compassion. It was this active love. And you know, the amazing thing is, this wasn't some evangelistic trick that Jesus had learned at some class. He was naturally motivated by love. He sincerely loved these people. And he was so intimately connected with his Father that the Father's love shone through him. We know that God is love, and so it makes sense that that would be reflected through his Son. And this was no ordinary compassion. Consider for a moment the scale of his work of healing and teaching. You know, there wasn't a building big enough in all of Palestine to house the multitudes that gathered to hear Jesus and to be healed by him, was there? Whether it was, hillsides of Galilee, or beside the road, or down by the sea with the fishermen, or in the synagogue. Every place that Jesus was became a hospital. All the sick were brought to him, weren't they? He laid his hands upon the afflicted ones and he healed them. In fact, it is said that there were entire towns where there was no cry of sickness to be heard because Jesus had passed through them. What an amazing thought. Not a sick person in the whole city because Jesus had passed through it. I think that's wonderful. And the love that Jesus showed, the love that drew the multitudes, it wasn't just a feeling. We misuse this word so much today. The love that Jesus showed was an action, wasn't it? People like to see action. It appeals when we see people doing stuff, when they're active, when they're out there, they're living out their beliefs. And we're told that a minister of the gospel should not be slothful in business, should be fervent in the spirit, serving the Lord. There's an interesting illustration. We read of when there was a famine in the land and Joseph brought his father and his brothers out of the land of Canaan, and Joseph presents them before Pharaoh as the monarch, or the Pharaoh looked down on these people, and he spoke to Jacob the father, and he says, how old are you? And Jacob says, I'm 130 years old. And then Pharaoh says to Joseph, the land of Egypt is before thee. In the best of the land make thy father and thy brethren to dwell. In the land of Goshen let them dwell. And if you know any men of activity among them, then make them rulers over my cattle. This is what men are attracted to, what people are attracted to. Action. And it's this action that will save people for eternity. In fact, we read in the Bible that God condemns carelessness and inactivity. If we see things that need to be done, God calls us to lend a helping hand. People at the moment are looking at churches. They watch things on First Light and Hope Channel, and they're watching us. They're watching us as Christians. They're watching us as Seventh-day Adventists. And they're saying, do these people really believe what they preach? Do their actions line up with what they teach? Let's have a look. We're still in Mark chapter 1. Very good. I want you to notice something about Jesus' action. Here in Mark chapter 1, we're going to follow Jesus through. This is, we're partway through the chapter. We're following Jesus through from the Sabbath church service through to Saturday evening. So Jesus goes into the church and teaches. There at the church, he's met by a man who's possessed, whom Jesus heals. I don't know about you, but after a service like that, I probably want to go home and have a rest. I'm normally pretty tired on a Sabbath afternoon anyway, but if someone came in here possessed of a demon, I imagine I'd be pretty worn out afterwards. But Jesus gets invited around to Simon's house for lunch, for fellowship lunch, and they arrive, and Simon's mother-in-law is sick, possibly COVID, not sure. So what does Jesus do? You remember? He heals her. That's right. And what does she do after that? He gets up and serves them. It's a pretty long day so far. Lots of activity. And then we get down to verse 32. Do you still have that in front of you?
Yeah, I do.
You're going to read verse 32 to 35.
And at even when the sun did set, they brought unto him all that were diseased, and them that were possessed with devils. And all the city was gathered together at the door. And he healed many that were sick of divers diseases, and cast out many devils, and suffered not the devils to speak, because they knew him. And in the morning, raising up a great while before day, he went out and departed into a solitary place, and there prayed.
Thank you. So what happened after Sabbath closed, after the sun went down? That's when the work started. I looked on my chart, and this took place in early summer in Jerusalem. The sun sets about 7:40 p.m. So we had this big, long day. Sun starts to set. It's getting dark in the town. And that's when people start coming out. Perhaps some of them were afraid to come out for healing because they didn't know what the religious leaders would say, because they know that there had been kerfuffles earlier with this topic. So they start coming out. And this isn't some, as they're lining up, it says, how much of the city came out? All the city, the whole city came out and gathered at the door. And Jesus healed many who were sick. And, I think we have a bit of a warped view today as we see characters on television like Benny Hinn. This wasn't like Jesus standing there and slaying people and, crowds fall over all at once. It wasn't zap, zap, zap as you see some of these preachers do. I think you hit it on the head. I imagine Jesus sitting down, talking with these people, hearing about their hurts and ministering to them and saying, I'll pray for you now. This wasn't a fast drop-in clinic. These people came to see and talk with Jesus. And so here we are, 7:40 p.m. This starts. How long do you suppose it took to go through the whole town? Quite a while, probably, eh? At least several hours. Yeah, right. We'll be getting to the middle of the night, and Jesus is teaching them. And so, would you want to go home after this man has just healed you of this ailment that you've had for years and years? You'd want to catch every word he shared, wouldn't you? So I don't know, I imagine it going on after midnight easily. It's only 3 or 4 hours. So he's working late into the night, and then the next morning, what time does he wake up? It says a long while before daybreak. At this time of year, sunrise was at 5:30 a.m. I'm not saying that this is the pattern we have to follow. Jesus, of course, had times of rest, but it was clear to the people that were around Jesus that he believed what he preached. He was willing to put in the effort. He was willing to stay up late. He was willing to get up early. He was willing to put in the work. I came across an interesting quote in the book Gospel Workers. It says, "The cause of God demands men who can see quickly and act instantaneously at the right time and with power." Not only did Jesus act with power, but he was courageous. I remember when Joshua received that instruction, he says, "Have not I commanded thee, be strong and of a good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed. For the Lord thy God is with thee, whithersoever thou goest." If we know that we're standing on the truth, we're standing on God's word, and if you believe it with all your heart, then you need to have the courage to share that. If you don't know how to share it, you need to find out. We just finished a 13-part series and learned a whole lot on how to share with others, and we're putting it into practice now. We're going visiting different people with the things that we've learned. But if you don't know what to do, find something. Talk to someone. That's why we have these mission videos up, so that we can see what different people are doing.
The Bible says poverty, which is God, not steps right, walk each day with God.
Walk each day with God. That's the start of it, isn't it? Would you define Jesus as courageous? Can you think of some instances where he showed his courage?
When the demon the disciples fled, Jesus just stood his ground, didn't he?
That's right. Facing the demonic, the man with a legion of demons, Jesus stood his ground when everyone else was running away.
They were attacking everyone and cutting themselves. They must have looked a terrible spectacle.
Jesus stood his ground. What other times can you think when Jesus showed his courage? What was that? Yeah. There's a few instances like that where Jesus seems to just get through and disappear from the action.
Or when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, they were coming at him with staves and all manner of weapons, weren't they? He was calm and asked them who they were seeking. And it said, "I am he," and he said, "Let the disciples go." So he stood up for them. Jesus knew what was happening. And he was perfectly calm because he had that relationship with God the Father.
That's right. That's a good point. Came across another interesting quote. I like collecting quotes from the same book. It says, "Courage, energy, and perseverance they, as Christ's followers, must possess. Though apparent impossibilities obstruct their way, by his grace they are to go forward. Instead of deploring difficulties, they are called upon to surmount them. They are to despair of nothing and to hope for everything."
Quoted by Sir Winston Churchill. Courage is the finest of all human qualities because it guarantees all others.
It's nice I hadn't heard that. And we we started off by saying that Jesus was a friend of sinners. What do you think it means to be someone's friend? Stand side by side in their place if need be. What else might you say makes a friend? Yeah, did Jesus do that? Did he want to do stuff for them? Did he want to spend time with them? Yeah. Caring, encouraging.
I find in Matthew that, excuse my voice, Jesus is always there at the 11th hour. Over and over again I find that. And I think, why did I spend time feeling, worried? And he doesn't let you down. He's there at the 11th hour.
I laugh because when you said the 11th hour, it's usually at the 59th minute.
That's right.
But he's always there.
You always have a higher plane we can go to.
Hmm.
And the sweetest thing that for me.
That's good. In the book of
There,
Yeah.
he's loving me. He's very sweet. Don't come up yet. Don't let go. No, I'm not.
It's wonderful grace. It's in those times that we need to hold on more tightly. You know, in the book of Proverbs, it describes friendship. It says, a man that has friends must show himself friendly. There is a friend that sticks closer than a brother. Now, that's what Jesus was, wasn't he? A friend that sticks closer than a brother. And a friend loves at all times. Jesus was also tactful. He was friendly and he was tactful. I think some Christians misunderstand this. That's tactful, not tactful. All too often, I see people who have had a positive experience, they've learned something interesting, they automatically want to move someone else from point A to point Z straight away. As soon as they meet them, at least that's what I've been prone to do in the past. I remember when I first became a Christian, I just attended a prophecy series. It was amazing. It changed my life. I learned so many things. And then I had the opportunity to go on a car ride with my brother-in-law, who's from Auckland to Taranaki. It was a 5-hour ride, and I think I proceeded to share with him everything I remembered from that prophecy series. I don't know if I stopped talking the whole time, but it didn't go down too well. I lacked tact, and I'm slowly learning that. I was reading an old magazine, an old ministry magazine. I like looking through some of these old ones because they have interesting stories. And I was reading about the Christian tact of Adventist minister. See, he was holding an evangelistic meeting and it had good attendance. And among the interested people was this woman, but her husband never attended. She became converted and she wanted baptism. And when she went home and told her husband that she was going to get baptized, he said to her, "Whoever baptizes you, I'm going to shoot. I'm going to kill him." But she was baptized. She was fearful, but she was baptized anyway. And when she went home, he reiterated that threat. He said, "If I ever meet the man who baptized you, I'm going to kill him." And so the minister was told by everyone to stay well away from their home, but he didn't. He went to find the man, and neither one of them had seen each other before. And so the minister walks up to the fence and he sees the man feeding his pigs. He's got a flock. It's a flock of pigs. He's got a flock of pigs that he's out there feeding. He obviously takes pride in these pigs. And the minister says, "Hello, neighbour." And he makes some comment about the pigs, how fine they look. And he asks, "What's the going price at the moment for hogs?" And they get talking about the pigs. And then the minister says, "Oh, I don't suppose I could trouble you for a drink of water?" "Sure," says the man, "come into the house." course, the man still didn't know that he was the minister. And he called his wife for a glass, and she brought the glass in, and imagine what her thought was when she sees her husband there and the minister sitting next to him. And the minister says to the wife, "Your husband has the best lot of hogs that I've ever seen in my life." And then she thought, well, now's the time, it's now or never. And she says, "Husband, this is my pastor, my minister." And they shook hands, and he gave him a glass of water, and they were friends. And later the man was baptized, just because the minister had tact. He knew what to say when. He knew not to delve right into the depths of his beliefs straight away. And we see this with Jesus. There were times when he said, "I've got more to share with you, but you're not ready for it yet." So we need that tact when we're sharing with others. We need to walk as he walked. This means showing genuine love. And if we don't have genuine love, we need to get that. It means caring tirelessly. It means using wisdom as to when we need to be courageous and speak and when we need to tactfully hold back. I really love this quote. I think it sums it up nicely, what we're to do as a people. And I found this to be true in my own work. It says, Christ's method alone will give true success in reaching the people. The Saviour mingled with people as one who desired their good. He showed sympathy for them, he ministered to their needs, and he won their confidence. Then he invited them, "Follow me." And the amazing thing is, it doesn't say that Jesus pretended to desire their good. It says that he genuinely desired their good. Regardless of what they chose in the future, he desired their good, and he had sympathy for them, and he ministered to them. We need to come close to people by personal effort. Now, if we would give less time to sermonizing and more time to personal ministry, we would see much greater results. We know that the poor are to be relieved and the sick cared for. The sorrowing and the bereaved are to be comforted, the ignorant instructed, and the inexperienced counseled. We are to weep with those who weep and to rejoice with those who rejoice. We are to be the salt of the earth. We are to mingle among people and genuinely love them and care for them, regardless of their background. Now, I share this message because church is pretty comfortable at the moment. We come along, we all know each other very well. We're all pretty similar, and it's nice. It's like going along to a club, country club. Not that I've ever been to a country club, but I imagine this is what it's like. And it's comfortable. You're not going to get much resistance from people. You're not going to get arguments. People are all pretty middle of the road. But we are told that at the end of time, the Holy Spirit is going to be poured out. And as we reach out to the community, as we employ these different outreaches, all sorts of people are going to be coming into this church. And it's not always going to be comfortable. Sometimes it's going to be really uncomfortable. But we need to prepare ourselves now. We need to have that love of Christ in us so that no matter who comes in here, we're ready to receive him. Because Jesus was a friend of sinners, and we need to ask ourselves, is this church a friend of sinners? Am I a friend of sinners? That's the question that I'd like to leave you with. Are we like Jesus? Are we capable? Are we receiving sinners? Are we friends of sinners? Let's close. Let's sing our closing psalm. I'll go.